Hello there, and welcome to this Beyond Shakespeare First Look Exploring session, where today we are looking at the final part of the Duchess of Malfi. This is our fourth session on this play, so if you haven't discovered the previous three parts, do go back and rootle around for them on YouTube. We've done the first four acts already, reading and discussing this pretty amazing play, and today we're going to finish off with Act 5. Helping me to uncover all the mayhem and the mystery is this crack team of readers who are going to just sort of help me go through it today. And so, reading the Cardinal in this session, we have...
with a sulking camera in Suffolk.
Yes, he cannot be seen, but he is still there. His voice is still there. And reading Doctors, Servants, and Grisolan today we have...
Hello, my name is Lynn. I'm in the northwestern United States.
Reading Ferdinand today is...
Lois in London.
Reading Delio and Bosola we have...
Aliki in Greece.
Reading Antonio and Roderigo is...
Rachel in Canada.
Reading Julia and Echo we have...
Sue in Drury Lane, London.
And reading Pescara we have...
Mark in the Midwest United States.
And I am Sarah. I will be reading the stage directions, and I will also be taking on the role of Malatesti when he turns up. And I am, of course, as always, whenever I'm hosting these sessions, stepping in temporarily for Rob Crighton. But don't worry, he will be back and on. This is just a temporary situation. So let's crack off. We'll start with Act 5, Scene 1, and we have the entrance of Antonio and Delio.
What think you of my hope of reconcilement to the Aragonian brethren?
I misdoubt it, for though they have sent their letters of safe conduct for your repair to Milan, they appear but nets to entrap you. The Marquis of Pescara, under whom you hold certain lands in cheat, much against his noble nature, hath been moved to seize those lands, and some of his dependents are this instant making it their suit to be invested in your revenues. I cannot think they mean well to your life, that do deprive you of your means of life, your living.
You are still an heretic to any safety I can shape myself.
Here comes the Marquis. I will make myself petitioner for some part of your land to know whither it is flying.
I pray do.
And Antonio withdraws as Pescara enters.
Sir, I have a suit to you.
To me?
An easy one. There is the citadel of Saint Bennet, with some domains of late in the possession of Antonio Bologna. Please you bestow them on me.
You are my friend, but this is such a suit not fit for me to give, nor you to take.
No, sir.
I will give you ample reason for it soon in private. Here is the Cardinal's mistress.
And enter Julia.
My lord, I am grown your poor petitioner, and should be an ill beggar had I not a great man's letter here, the Cardinal's, to court you in my favour.
And she gives him a letter.
He entreats for you the citadel of Saint Bennet that belonged to the banished Bologna.
Yes.
Could not have thought of a friend I could rather pleasure with it. 'Tis yours.
Sir, I thank you, and he shall know how doubly I am engaged both in your gift and speediness of giving, which makes your grant the greater.
And exit Julia.
How they fortify themselves with my ruin.
Sir, I am little bound to you.
Why?
Because you denied this suit to me and gave it to such a creature.
Do you know what it was? It was Antonio's land. Not forfeited by course of law, but ravished from his throat by the Cardinal's entreaty. It were not fit I should bestow so main a piece of wrong upon my friend. 'Tis a gratification only due to a strumpet, for it is injustice. Shall I sprinkle the pure blood of innocence to make these followers I call my friends look ruddier upon me? I'm glad this land, ta'en from the owner by such a wrong, returns again unto so foul an use as salary for his lust. Learn, good Delio, to ask noble things of me, and you shall find I'll be a nobler giver.
You instruct me well.
Why, Here's a man now that would frighten impudence from saucest beggars.
Prince Ferdinand's come to Milan, sick as they give out of an epilepsy, but some say 'tis a frenzy. I'm going to visit him.
And exit Pescara.
'Tis a noble old fellow.
What course do you mean to take, Antonia?
This night I mean to venture all my fortune, which is no more than a poor lingering life, to the Cardinal's worst of malice. I've got private access to his chamber, and intend to visit him about the mid of night, as once his brother did our noble Duchess. It may be that the sudden apprehension of danger, for I'll go in mine own shape, when he shall see it freight with love and duty, may draw the poison out of him and work a friendly reconcilement. If it fail, yet it shall rid me of this infamous calling, for better fall once than be ever falling.
I'll second you in all danger, and however my life keeps rank with yours.
You are still my loved and best friend.
And they exit, and that's the end of the scene. And I do apologize if you can hear a drill going in the background. My neighbors have decided to do some DIY. Okay. The Duchess is dead. She died at the end of the last session, or towards the end of the last session, and so the action has now moved on to Antonio, who, despite wax effigies in evidence, is still very much alive. Thoughts from the room, please. I see a hand from Lynn.
Yeah, I was talking a couple sessions ago about the claustrophobic feel of this play, something that sort of underscores that is all the spying and eavesdropping that goes on. There's a lot of eavesdropping.
Yeah.
A lot of, like even the wooing scene is basically being eavesdropped on by Cariola. And Ferdinand eavesdrops on that little conversation among Cariola, the Duchess, and Antonio. So and here Antonio sort of spying on Pescara to see what's going to happen when Delio asks for a favor. Yeah, it's kind of like, as you watch people watching people, you kind of feel like nobody's safe. There's no privacy. There's no safety.
Yes, and yes, the good characters, in inverted commas, are just as capable of doing a bit of nifty eavesdropping as the villains. So yeah, there's this sense that everybody is just spying on everyone else the entire time. Lois.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that the Duchess was killed at the end of the previous act, but that was in another country, or at least another city, and nobody here seems to know about it. I mean, Antonio doesn't know this yet, which is sort of important. And I guess the other thing is that funny little episode with Pescara denying the lands to Delio and giving them to Julia simply because the whole way in which they were obtained was so corrupt that he wants to kind of carry on the corruption by giving them to somebody he takes to be corrupt. It's a funny little episode. It's almost like a fable or something.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I'm not going to give these lands to you because you're a good egg, and these are obtained, corruptly. So I'll give them to the Cardinal's mistress. Is that like is he looking out for Delio there? Is it like a sort of like, oh, if the hoo-ha hits the fan, then you don't want to be part of this, you want to stay out of it, I'm doing you a favor? Or is there more to it than that? Lynn has a thought.
In a sense, it's more a matter of principle than of practical consideration. That there's just something about that, like, sort of morally, you get your hands dirty if you earn money from stolen property. That he's looking out for Delio's soul more than his worldly welfare. That's my sense.
Good point. Mark.
Yeah, he has that sentence in part of his big speech in this scene where he says, "Shall I sprinkle the pure blood of innocence to make those followers I call my friends look ruddier upon me?" And I'm not quite sure if he's saying, if I give things unjustly acquired to my friends, then they'll think I'm a bad guy. Look right here upon me, like bloodier. Seem to be a definition of that, or is it like, they might, my friends might start to desire bad things to happen if they're rewarded when that happens. I'm not quite sure what exactly is getting at there.
Yeah. Lois, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think ruddier probably means something like more healthy. I mean, sprinkle
Agreed.
blood on them, to make them grow, to put fresh blood in their cheeks, that kind of thing. But the blood of innocence, he just doesn't want to be part of this. I mean, the trouble is, obviously, if you're Delio, you might say, well, I just like this land. I don't care. And this great moral sentiment, and why give it to someone who's thoroughly corrupt just because it's corrupt? But it really does seem to me to be the kind of thing that Webster might have read in a collection of sayings or stories and thought, what a great plot, and just decided to use it here.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, from a modern perspective, because if the unrighteous are prospering through being corrupt, and then you're like, oh no, a good person can't have this land because it's tainted by corruption, so give it to a corrupt person, then the unrighteous are continuing to prosper even more. But that is peculiar. Rachel.
But if Pescara were to grant the land to Delio, it would end up in Antonio's hands, and we can't have it end up in Antonio's hands, right? From a plot point of view.
Well, from a plot perspective, but like Pescara doesn't know that, so
No, I know, but Webster does.
True. So, okay, maybe that's his tortuous way of. But then why put the scene in at all? I don't know. Anyway, it's a nice
as Lois suggested, it acts as a fable, as a morality test.
Right? Yeah. I mean, yes, it's a test.
Yeah.
It's a test of Pescara, isn't it? Really. And he comes through. Susan.
Nice to see a woman getting something, however trumpety she may be.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
After seeing the Duchess, now we have somebody who's gonna, and I'll have that, thanks. Yeah, and that man.
And I mean, and she's been sleeping with the Cardinal, so I think she probably deserves it.
God.
Yeah. Good Lord.
But, I mean, back to the first comment, Lynn, I quite agree. As an actor, be God, you've got to be quick on your entrances. It's like a Joe Orton play or something. Bang, Julia's on, bang, somebody else goes. That's skillful stuff, and the keeping the ball going. Obviously, Webster's realised the last act has got to be juggle, keep the energy up.
Yeah. Yes, because I mean, a different playwright would have ended with the Duchess's death, but he hasn't. We've got another whole act to go still, which is intriguing. Mark.
Yeah, we were just talking about Pescara being tested here, which I think is interesting, since Bosola, as we may remember from I think the last one of the previous sessions, he was tested and seemed to be a good guy on Antonio's side, and it's like, well, he was just not actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does feel like Pescara is being kind of tested in a different way, sort of tactically, and he seems to be legit in his trueness.
So far, at least, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next? Perhaps you do already know, but we have people in the room who don't. So we're just going to take it one scene at a time. And on that note, unless anyone has anything else to add, we will move on.
Sarah,
yes, Alan.
My thought on this was possibly more cynical, which was Pescara is looking for the main chance going forward, and he doesn't want to be seen to be disobliging the Cardinal, who's the man who's got the power.
Yes, that's also a distinct possibility. Of course. Anyone got anything to add about that? No? Right, okay. Alan, I am not seeing your little raised hand on your screen. So if you want to say something, maybe just drop a line in the chat to say I have to speak. Good, right, okay. We shall move on then. Let's go to Act 5, Scene 2. Enter Pescara and Doctor.
Now, doctor, may I visit your patient?
If it please your lordship, but he's instantly to take the air here in the gallery by my direction.
Pray thee, what's his disease?
A very pestilent disease, my lord. They call lycanthropia.
What's that? I need a dictionary to it.
I'll tell you. In those that are possessed with it, there o'erflows such melancholy humor, they imagine themselves to be transformed into wolves, steal forth to churchyards in the dead of night, and dig bodies up. As 2 nights since, one met the Duke about midnight in a lane behind St. Mark's Church with the leg of a man upon his shoulder, and he howled fearfully. He said he was a wolf, only the difference was a wolf's skin was hairy on the outside, his on the inside. Bade them take their swords, rip up his flesh, and try. Straight I was sent for, and having ministered to him, found his grace very well recovered.
I am glad on it.
Yet not without some fear of relapse. If he grows to his fit again, I'll go a nearer way to work with him than ever Paracelsus dreamed of. They'll give me leave. If they'll give me leave, I'll buffet his madness out of him. Stand aside, he comes.
Enter Ferdinand, Cardinal, Malatesti, and Bosola.
Leave me.
Why doth your lordship love this solitariness?
Eagles commonly fly alone. They are crows, daws, and starlings that flock together. Look, what's that follows me?
Nothing, my lord?
Yes.
'Tis your shadow.
Stay it. Let it not haunt me.
Impossible, if you move and the sun shine.
I will throttle it.
And Ferdinand throws himself down on his shadow. Oh, my lord, you are angry with nothing.
You are a fool. How is it possible I should catch my shadow unless I fall upon it? When I go to hell, I mean to carry a bribe. For look you, good gifts evermore make way for the worst persons.
Rise, good my lord.
I'm studying the art of patience.
'Tis a noble virtue.
To drive 6 snails before me, from this town to Moscow, neither use goad nor whip to them, but let them take their own time. The patientest man in the world match me for an experiment, and I'll crawl after like a sheep biter.
Force him up.
And they raise him.
Use me well. You were best. What I've done, I've done. I'll confess nothing.
Now let me come to him. Are you mad, my lord? Are you out of your princely wits?
What's he?
Your doctor.
Let me have his beard sawed off and his eyebrows filed, more civil.
I must do mad tricks with him, for that's the only way on it. I have brought your grace a salamander skin to keep you from sunburning.
I have cruel sore eyes.
The white of a cockatrice egg is present remedy.
Let it be a new laid one, you were best. Hide me from him. Physicians are like kings. They brook no contradiction.
Now he begins to fear me. Now let me alone with him.
Oh, put off your gown.
Let me have some 40 urinals filled with rose water. He and I'll go pelt one another with them. Now he begins to fear me. Can you fetch a frisk, sir? Let him go upon my peril. I find by his eyes he stands in awe of me. I'll make him as tame as a dormouse.
Can you fetch your frisk, sir? I will stamp him into a cullis, flay off his skin to cover one of the antinomies this rogue hath set in the cold yonder in barbarous surgeon's hall. Hence, hence! You are all of you like beasts for sacrifice.
And Ferdinand throws the doctor down and beats him.
There's nothing left of you but tongue and belly, flattery and lechery.
And exit Ferdinand.
Doctor, he did not fear you thoroughly.
True, I was somewhat too forward.
Mercy upon me, what a fatal judgment hath fallen upon this Ferdinand.
Knows your grace what accident hath brought unto the prince this strange distraction?
I must faint somewhat. Thus they say at Gru, you have heard it rumoured for these many years. None of our family dies, but there is seen the shape of an old woman, which is given by tradition to us to have been murdered by her nephews for her riches. Such a figure, one night, as the prince sat late up at his book, appeared to him when crying out for help. The gentleman of his chamber found his grace all in a cold sweat, altered much in face and language, since which apparition he hath grown worse and worse. I much fear he cannot live.
Sir, I would speak with you.
We'll leave your grace, wishing to the sick prince, our noble lord, all health of mind and body.
You are most welcome.
And exit Pescara, Malatesti and Doctor. And just before we carry on with the Cardinal and Bosola, we're going to just pause there for a second because I feel we just need to have a little chat about this section before we move on. So, whoever it was who was saying in session 2 that Ferdinand was a bit loopy, he literally is. It has been revealed, or is he, or is it just a whole big? Is he actually a werewolf, or is this just yes? Who knows? Thoughts from the room, please, Lynn.
Yeah, there's just kind of a morbid hilariousness about this. I mean, I'm sure that that's intentional, that this is supposed to be sort of grotesquely funny. Ferdinand, I mean, as I remember, and I haven't actually checked the Dramatis Personae, he's a head of state. I think he's a duke. Anyways, it's this important guy is having this delusion that he's a werewolf, and some random stranger meets him in an alley with like the leg of a corpse over his shoulder. Oh my god! And the doctor's like, I got it handled, and then Ferdinand beats him up. I mean, I think that we're supposed to. I think this is supposed to be funny in a really grand guignol, grotesque way. Yeah, the moods in this play are just really all over.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not been the most stable dude right from the beginning, has he? Really? I mean, you know, the signs were all there, you know, but like, and you know, incest and. Yeah, torturing your sister. He's
Best part ever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Every
great part for an actor. But I mean, you really do actually get an opportunity to chew up the scenery here if you want to. You know, you could actually grab something and start gnawing on it. So yeah, I mean, he's never been a stable guy, but this just does take it to the next level, I feel. I'm going to go to Lois, then Rachel, then Alan.
Yeah, John Gielgud played it in, I think, 1947. But there's been some foreshadowing in a way. I mean, in that scene between Ferdinand and Bosola after the murder, Bosola says, "Who shall dare to reveal this?" And Ferdinand says, "Oh, I'll tell thee, the wolf shall find her grave." And
yes.
And that's clearly, you know, it's kind of gone into his head, I think. And but there's also, you know, someone I think has mentioned that there's an awful lot of animal imagery and characters being seen as animals, and so this is a kind of logical development of it. There's also, you know, I think I've mentioned that there's a lot about doubles, and you know, the twins, and what we've got here is somebody trying to throttle his own shadow. Which is a really creepy idea. And we've had the Duchess looking in a mirror and seeing her brother. And, you know, just it's full of this kind of nightmare imagery of echoes, reflections, and so on.
It is. And it's I mean, I have read, and I don't know if this is true, answers on a postcard, please, if you have anything different to add at home, or better still, put it in the comments under the video, that this is the first mention of you know, lysanthropy in literature. You know, that this is the first time werewolves get a mention. And I don't know for certain whether it is or not, but there are just all kinds of things. This thing of like, fighting with your shadow. there's just an awful lot in here that does prefigure later, the later, like the Gothic horror genre, in particular. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but if there are any Angela Carter fans out there, that whole thing about a person being hairy on the inside, this is where it comes from. But anyway, let's move on.
Can I just say that in the animal thing?
Yeah, go on then quickly.
Sorry.
But then I want to go to Rachel.
Well,
and
it's
then
just Richard Dad. That bit with the snails. I
Yes.
started saying Richard Dad, who after all was in a madhouse. Sorry, that's all.
he was. Yeah, no, that's a very good reference for anyone
It's
who's
not just
interested.
the law.
Richard Dad, Victorian painter, locked up in an insane asylum, painted some really quite extraordinary pictures.
His father.
Yeah, Rachel.
For the Ferdinand, interest in Ferdinand in this scene, I like the mid part of the scene where he's prostrate on the ground and yelling at everyone else. He's jumped on his shadow and he's obviously delivering his lines while face down on the stage. I think that's kind of fun and fantastic.
Oh yeah, I mean the joy you
And they
could
have
have
to
with
pick it
that.
back, scrape him up off the floor, and
Yeah.
try to get him upright again. And I think
Yeah,
that's-
I mean that could go on for some time, mind you. It's already quite a long play, but like, yeah, you could really have some fun with that. Right, Alan, let me come to you.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that strikes me is that Webster's default setting seems to be volume control to 11. The whole thing is so OTT. And of course, Ferdinand used to be a werewolf, but he's all right now.
I see what you did there. I'm gonna disagree with you about it all being at 11, because I think there are moments where it's absolutely yes right up there, but I think there are there have been in previous acts some really beautiful subtle quiet moments as well. So I think I think that's kind of almost how he manages to get away with this. Because he's made it, he set the scene with some quite, beautiful psychological subtleties that, which means he can now like push and take it into stranger and darker and just more completely crazy places. Anyone got anything else to add? We have stopped mid-scene, so if no one's got anything else to say, let's pick it up. So Pescara and Malatesti and the doctor have all just exited, presumably still just counting their limbs to make sure that they're all still attached after dealing with Ferdinand, and the Cardinal is left alone with Bosola.
You come. So, this fellow must not know by any means I had intelligence in our Duchess's death, but though I counselled it, the full of all the engagement seemed to grow from Ferdinand. Now, sir, how fares our sister? I do not think that sorrow makes her look like to an oft-dyed garment. She shall now take comfort from me. Why do you look so wildly? Oh, the fortune of your master here, the prince, dejects you. But be you of happy comfort. You'll do one thing for me, I'll entreat. Though he had a cold tombstone over his bones, I'd make you what you would be.
Anything. Give it me in a breath and let me fly to it. They that think long, small expedition win. They that think long, small expedition win. For musing much on the end cannot begin.
And enter Julia.
Sir, will you come in to supper?
I am busy. Leave me.
What an excellent shape hath that fellow.
And exit Julia.
'Tis thus. Antonio lurks here in Milan. Inquire him out and kill him. While he lives, our sister cannot marry, and I have thought of an excellent match for her. Do this and style me thy advancement.
By what means shall I find him out?
There is a gentleman called Delio here in the camp that hath long been approved his loyal friend. Set eye upon that fellow. Follow him to mass. Maybe Antonio, though he do account religion but a school name, for fashion of the world, may accompany him. Or else go inquire out Delio's confessor and see if you can bribe him to reveal it. There are 1,000 ways a man might find to trace him, as to know what fellows haunt the Jews for taking up great sums of money, Sure is hot. Or else go to the picture makers and learn who bought her picture lately. Some of these happily may take.
Well, I'll not freeze in the business. I would see that wretched thing Antonio above all sights in the world.
Do and be happy.
And the Cardinal exits.
This fellow doth breed basilisks in's eyes. He's nothing else but murder. Yet he seems not to have notice of the Duchess' death. 'Tis his cunning. I must follow his example. There cannot be a surer way to trace than that of an old fox.
And enter Julia with a pistol.
So, sir, you are well met.
How now?
Nay, the doors are fast enough. Now, sir, I will make you confess your treachery.
Treachery?
Yes, confess to me which of my women 'twas who hired to put love powder into my drink.
Love powder?
Yes, when I was at Malfi, why should I fall in love with such a face else? I have already suffered for thee so much pain, the only remedy to do me good is to kill my longing.
Sure, your pistol holds nothing but perfumes or kissing comfits. Excellent lady, you have a pretty way on't to discover your longing. Come, I'll disarm you and arm you thus. This is wondrous strange.
Compare thy form and my eyes together, you'll find my love no such great miracle. Now, you'll say I am wanton. This nice modesty in ladies is but a troublesome familiar that haunts them.
Know you me? I am a blunt soldier.
The better. Sure, there wants fire where there was no lovely sparks of roughness.
And I want compliment.
Why, ignorance in courtship cannot make you do amiss if you have a heart to do well.
You are very fair.
Nay, if you lay beauty to my charge, I must plead unguilty.
Your bright eyes carry a quiver of darts in them sharper than sunbeams.
You will mar me with commendation. Put yourself to the charge of courting me, whereas now I woo you.
I have it. I will work upon this creature. Let us grow most amorously familiar. If the great Cardinal should see me thus, would he not count me a villain?
No, he may count me a wanton, not lay a scruple of offence on you. For if I see and steal a diamond, the fault is not in the stone, but in me, the thief that purloins it. I am sudden with you. We that are great women of pleasure used to cut off these uncertain wishes and unquiet longings, and in an instant join the sweet delight and the pretty excuse together. Had you been near the street under my chamber window, even there I should have courted you.
Oh, you are an excellent lady.
Bid me do somewhat for you presently to express my love you.
I will. And if you love me, fail not to effect it. The Cardinal grows wondrous melancholy. Demand the cause. Let him not put you off with feigned excuse. Discover the main ground on't.
Why would you know this?
I have depended on him, and I hear that he has fallen in some disgrace with the Emperor. If he be like the mice that forsake falling houses, I would shift to other dependents.
You shall not need follow the wars. I'll be your maintenance.
And I, your loyal servant. But I cannot leave my calling.
Not leave an ungrateful general for the love of a sweet lady? You are like some cannot sleep in feather beds, but must have blocks for their pillows.
Will you do this?
Cunningly.
Tomorrow I'll expect the intelligence.
Tomorrow, get you into my cabinet. You shall have it with you. Do not delay me no more than I do you. I am like one that is condemned. I have my pardon promised, but I would see it sealed. Go, get you in. You shall see me wind my tongue about his heart like a skein of silk.
And exit Bosola and enter Cardinal.
Where are you?
Enter servants.
Here,
Let none upon your lives have conference with the Prince Ferdinand, unless I know it. In his distraction he reveal a murder.
And exit the servants.
Yon's my lingering consumption. I'm weary of her, and by any means would be quit of.
How now, my lord? How ails you?
Nothing.
Oh, you are much altered. Come, I must be your secretary and remove this lead from off your bosom. What's the matter?
I may not tell you.
Are you so far in love with sorrow you cannot part with a part of it? Oh, think you I cannot love your grace when you are sad as well as merry? Or do you suspect I, that have been a secret to your heart these many winters, cannot be the same unto your tongue?
Satisfy thy longing. Only way to make thee keep my counsel is not to tell thee.
Tell your echo this, or flatterers, that like echoes still report what they hear, though most imperfect, and not me. For if that you be true unto yourself, I'll know.
Will you rack me?
No, judgment still draw it from you. It is an equal fault to tell one's secrets unto all or none.
The first argues folly.
But the last tyranny.
Very well. Why, imagine I have committed some secret deed which I desire the world may never hear of.
Therefore, may not I know it? You have concealed from me as great a sin as adultery. Sir, never was occasion for perfect trial of my constancy till now. So I beseech you.
You'll repent it?
Never.
It hurries thee to ruin. I'll not tell thee. Be well advised, and think what danger 'tis to receive a prince's secrets. They that do had need have their breasts hooped with adamant to contain them. I pray thee, yet be satisfied. Examine thine own frailty. 'Tis more easy to tie knots than unloose them. 'Tis a secret that, like a lingering poison, may chance lie spread in thy veins and kill thee 7 years hence.
Now you dally with me.
No more, thou shalt know it. By my appointment, the great Duchess of Malfi and 2 of her young children, 4 nights since, were strangled.
Oh, heaven, sir! What have you done?
How now? How settles this? Think you your bosom will be a grave dark and obscure enough for such a secret?
You have undone yourself, sir.
Why?
It lies not in me to conceal it.
No. Come, I will swear you to it upon this book.
Most religiously.
Kiss it.
And she kisses the book.
Now you shall never utter it. Thy curiosity hath undone. Thou art poisoned with that book, because I knew thou couldst not keep my counsel. I bound thee to it by death.
Enter Bosola.
For pity's sake, hold!
Ha! Bosola!
I forgive you this equal piece of justice you have done, for I betrayed your counsel to that fellow. He overheard it. That was the cause I said it lay not in me to conceal it.
O foolish woman, couldst thou not have poisoned him?
'Tis weakness. Too much to think what should have been done. I go. I know not whither.
And Julia dies.
Wherefore camest thou hither?
That I might find a great man like yourself, not out of his wits as the Lord Ferdinand, to remember my service.
I'll have thee hewed in pieces.
Make not yourself such a promise of that life which is not yours to dispose of.
Who placed thee here?
Her lust, as she intended.
Very well. Now you know me for your fellow murderer.
And wherefore should you lay fair marble colours upon your rotten purposes to me? Unless you imitate some that do plot great treasons, and when they have done, go hide themselves in the grave of those were actors in't.
No more. There is a fortune attends thee.
Shall I go to fortune any longer? 'Tis the fool's pilgrimage.
I have honours in store for thee.
There are a many ways that conduct to seeming honour, some of them very dirty ones.
Throw to the devil thy melancholy. Fire burns well. What need we keep a stirring of't, and make a greater smother? Thou wilt kill Antonio?
Yes.
Take up that body.
I think I shall shortly grow the common beer for churchyards.
I will allow thee some dozen of attendants to aid thee in the murder.
Oh, by no means. Physicians that apply horse leeches to any rank swelling use to cut off their tails that the blood may run through them the faster. Let me have no train when I go to shed blood, lest it make me have a greater when I ride to the gallows.
Come to me after midnight to help remove that body to own lodging. I'll give out she died of the plague. 'Twill breed the less inquiry after her death.
Where's Castruccio, her husband?
He rode to Naples to take possession of Antonio's citadel.
Believe me, you have done a very happy turn.
Fail not to come. There is the master key of our lodgings, and by that you may conceive what trust I plant in you.
You shall find me ready.
And the Cardinal exits.
Oh, poor Antonio, though nothing be so needful to thy estate as pity, yet I find nothing so dangerous. I must look to my footing. It's such slippery ice pavements. Men had need to be frost-nailed well. They may break their necks else. The precedents here are for me. How this man bears up in blood. Seems fearless. Why, 'tis well. Security some men call the suburbs of hell, only a dead wall between. Well, good Antonio, I'll seek thee out, and all my care shall be to put thee into safety from the reach of these most cruel biters that have got some of thy blood already. It may be I'll join with thee in a most just revenge. The weakest arm is strong enough that strikes with a sword of justice. Still methinks the Duchess haunts me. There. 'Tis nothing but my melancholy. Oh, penitence, let me truly taste thy cup that throws men down, only to raise them up.
And he exits, and that's the end of Act 5, Scene 2. So, well, my goodness, we've had another body to add to the count. Julia's kissed a poisoned Bible, which the Cardinal just happened to have lying around, because that's what you do when you're a Cardinal. You always have a poisoned Bible to hand just in case you need to knock someone off quick.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah,
Sex
yeah.
and death.
Absolutely,
page.
yes. Oh, yes. It's all happening.
And what's with the gun? The gun. This is puppets' hands from Sicily. You know, those amazing puppets. Sorry, I don't have a gun to hand.
That's okay. You do with
Hand
you
to hand.
exactly. You use what's around. Did anyone else get a flashback to Arden of Faversham there? Like, because they have a whole theory, like, that they're going to murder him with a poisoned crucifix, and it's like, how the hell is that going to work? Oh, well, apparently it actually does. It does in this play anyway. It's probably because it's Italy. You know, they're much savvier with using religious artifacts to poison people. I will go to Aliki, and then is that a hand-in? No,
Yeah.
it is.
Let's just add death by being poisoned by a Bible that is being handed to you by a prince of the church who suborned you into mortal sin in the first place.
Yeah. I know that, how can I phrase this? Webster is not done with the Cardinal yet, so he's going to go on, and maybe he'll get right to the end of the play and have a fat and happy life. But if it had been me, I would have been so tempted to have her just grab the Bible and just stuff it in his mouth and and deal with him there and then. But anyway, that didn't happen. He's still going. I saw Lynn, you had a hand.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about repetitions and echoes and reflections and circularity. I will just point out that Julia trying to get Bosola to sleep with her is a sort of perverse rehearsal of the scene where the Duchess woos Antonio.
Yes,
Nice.
Yes, that's a really good point. Did anyone though? Because that scene between the Duchess and Antonio, although a lot happened very quickly in that scene, I kind of felt like it was sort of, it was fine. Like psychologically, it held together for me, as a viewer, because clearly they'd had a long-term relationship. We were coming in at the beginning of this play when they'd known each other a long time and things had been building, and so the fact that it all kind of comes to a point, one minute she hasn't confessed to her lover, the next minute they're married. It didn't really seem to, it seemed to hang together for me psychologically. This, I have to say, didn't quite hang together for me psychologically. Did anyone else find that? Or it just seemed to me super convenient that she suddenly, I think, does she have a line in an earlier scene where she Lois, I'm looking at you here because I'm thinking you might remember. Has she mentioned that she fancies him before this?
No, yeah, she had that line. What an excellent shape hath that fellow. That's when she just gets a glimpse of him. I mean, I take it.
But that was literally earlier on.
That was right now.
That was just right now. But we haven't had anything previously.
Oh no, she's never seen him before. I mean, that's why. But she says, "We that are great women of pleasure do this kind of thing." I would have.
In
other words,
it's called audacity.
Well, yes.
There's people in this world that audaciously go, "I want that. I'm having that."
Yeah, and I totally get that.
Sort of mimsy with the Borogroves. Get in bed with me. Go on.
Nice Lewis Carroll reference there.
Get on with it.
I do agree with that. Yeah, okay, she's audacious, but even so, the fact that he wants her to do something, I mean, she must know that this is quite dangerous, even though she doesn't know what his secret is. I mean, she must.
But she gets off on, maybe.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's pretty dangerous to have a long-term affair with a cardinal. Christ. Oh, sorry.
All right, I will mull on that. It's a good point. Right, I will go to Mark and then Rachel and then Aliki.
One little thing I enjoyed about this scene is when Bosola's like, if the Cardinal sees me, I'm gonna get in trouble. And she says, no. She says, for if I see and steal a diamond, the fall's not in the stone, but in me the thief, you'll be fine. I find that interesting that she compares him to a diamond, to a jewel. And I don't know how often I've seen that, where I've definitely seen, dudes comparing women to jewels in early modern theater. So I thought that was a fun little bit.
Yeah. Rachel, then Aliki.
I think it does make a certain amount of psychological sense from Julia's perspective. I think Julia would be super fun to play in this scene and in other places. I mean, in a variety of ways to play her. But in the beginning of the scene, the Cardinal has brushed her off and is clearly in the process of rejecting her. And she's in the process of finding a new location for her extramarital, activities. And which she seems to, benefit from in material and, physical ways. And so I think it does make some sort of I think I like Lynn's point that it's the obverse of the good courtship scene at the beginning of the play. But I think Julia's quite fun here and quite, terrible and fun. At this, I think she's glorious and awful and,
Maybe being given that land has sort of turned her on, given her an extra bit of, hey, I got that as well.
Little bit of agency. Yeah.
Yes.
Good, fair point. Right, Aliki, then Lois.
Okay, two things. One, in response to Mark's point, I think it's herself she's comparing to the jewel. It's not your fault you picked me up. There I was at your feet going. But also, I think, to go back to the psychological realism of her lust, I think the Cardinal's a very cold fish, I bet he doesn't give her what she needs. And what does she say? Oh, and at best, right, even if he isn't, he's a sedentary man. He sits around a lot in robes, signing papers, doing things like that. And here comes this, basically, and that's the first thing she says, what a shape. Bosola must be looking pretty fine in the torso, you know what I'm saying? Nice broad shoulders, that wedge shape thing that men of action get.
Yes, well, we now all know Aliki's preferences there.
I tend to like nerds, but on the other hand, I can see where she's coming from.
Nice wedge-shaped nerds. Right, who was next? There was someone. It was Lois. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a kind of humor in this scene. I mean, even Bosola's question, "Foolish woman, couldst not thou have poisoned him?" I mean, that way around. I mean, what a thing to say. And then when the Cardinal says, "Carry her off," well, I mean, this is really a meta-theatrical comment that he makes. I think I shall shortly grow the common beer for churchyards. He's carried the Duchess off stage at the end of the previous act. Now he's carrying Julia off stage. I mean, it's really almost preempting audience laughter. Here he goes again with another dead body.
With another body over his shoulder. Yes. Yeah. Yes, he's turning into a bit of a grim reaper, isn't he? But by which I mean, like, okay, he's not the one always doing the reaping, but he's the one like taking them off. Susan.
I mean, this is one scene I would really like to physically see. I've really enjoyed reading this, and in some ways I haven't minded that we are not standing up and walking around and doing it. But there's something about, I wanted to see that Cardinal in the red robe with the book and her kneeling and kissing it. It's an image that's terribly powerful, and it's sort of looking like those paintings where there's the person that's wanting to be pardoned by God, and so they're painted in next to the Madonna. What is that?
The patron.
Yes. There's something of that. And I would like to see that scene.
I am now thinking, I'm wondering, like, I mean, I can totally imagine that the Cardinal just has a poison Bible lying around for exigencies like this, because he's that kind of dude. But I also wonder, there's part of me now that is thinking, actually, was he planning to kill her anyway? Was he just like, maybe because he was kind of giving her the brush off earlier on, maybe he was like, you know what, I've had enough of you. And so, but I don't want you talking about the fact that you've been my mistress. So maybe that was always going to happen.
Good point.
In which case, if that's the case, then that whole thing where she's like, oh, tell me. He's like, no, I'm not going to tell you for your own sake. I mean, that just suddenly becomes a very like more malevolent cat and mouse kind of game, doesn't it? Lois and then Lynn.
Yeah. I mean, you can also do what I've seen, I'm sure, in at least one production where he kind of turns his back on her and goes to a table where he's got the Bible, but he's also got various other things. And you can sort of see him doing something.
Oh, right.
Pouring poison from his ring onto the Bible or something.
Well, yeah, he's probably got it in like a poison ring, and he opens and he just, that could, totally do that. Lynn.
This sequence, when the production at the Wanamaker some years ago, I thought did this really well. Julia comes in and says, "Are you coming to supper?" And he brushes her off and is very annoyed, and she kind of pouts. And then when she comes in to sort of check on what's going on, and she has that line about, "Ooh, he's got a nice body." She's eating something. I think it might be an apricot. So that just sort of underlies her sensuality. And when she kisses the Bible, she's like, "Oh, there was something What was that? So, the way it was staged actually makes it, helps that sort of believability factor. And
Yeah, I have no problem with the believability of this whole poisoning, because it's just so gloriously over the top. I just think it's fabulous. The thing I was having difficulty believing was that Julia would do something so dangerous for Bosola, having literally just met him and just decided that she fancies him. But then I do take Sue's point about, she likes to live on the edge. She likes to live dangerously. That's what she gets her thrills from. But no, I think this poisoning is just like, it's kind of glorious, isn't it? From a dramatic perspective, that is.
There was that speech. Sorry, Sarah.
No, carry on.
There was a speech much earlier on, wasn't there? I think it was Ferdinand, Lois, when they're talking about all these burly men shagging her. My gangbang scene. Yeah. And there's definitely got this quality. There's all these different sorts of men in this play. There is the mad howling. There is the red straight line of, I'm sure Gielgud looked wonderful as the Cardinal. And then there's, Brian Cox. And I think these different physiques is very much part of it. And that's to do with seeing it, isn't it?
Lois.
The physicality.
I mean, it's true. I think what Sue's imagining is that scene where Ferdinand is terrified that he's imagining too much, and he's imagining his sister having sex with somebody. And I think the Cardinal even says, who? And he says, oh, some strong-thighed bargeman. He's looking for the lowest sort of characters he can think of, but all big, brawny types. So, yeah, there's this notion of, tremendous sort of physicality, sexuality. But I think it's interesting also to try to work out what is Bosola's attitude when this woman first appears with a gun. I mean, how seriously does he take that? Does he think it's just some sort of weird way of talking to him, or is she about to shoot him? And then when she suddenly says that she loves him, I mean, nobody said they loved him in this play. And does he have a moment of thinking maybe she really does, or is his first thought just, I can use this, which is obviously what he thinks very quickly. I don't know. It just quite fascinating. It
is fascinating. It continues to feed into this ambiguity about Bosola on the page, and feed into the question of how do you play him? How do you direct someone to play him in a production? Which way do you take him? And I mean, it's still. I mean, but that soliloquy he has at the end there. Yeah. I mean, he's like maybe I'll join with thee. It may be I'll join with thee in a most just revenge. But he doesn't actually say, I'm going to go and do this. Even now, having seen everything he's seen, and knowing what he knows, and, being haunted by the Duchess. So clearly he's got a lot of guilt and remorse there. He's still not like, it's not like he's saying, no, I need to atone for what I've done. He's still like saying, well, maybe I'll join with you. But there's still ambiguity there. He is the most fascinating character. Right. Anyone got anything else to add?
I was just going to mention now that last soliloquy of his, where he's like, I'm going to do the right thing now. I'm going to help Antonio. But it's not as clear cut as it could be.
Absolutely. Right, let us move on then. We are going into Act 5, Scene 3. Enter Antonio and Delio.
Yawns the Cardinal's window. This fortification grew from the ruins of an ancient abbey, and to yon side of the river lies a wall, piece of a cloister, which, in my opinion, gives the best echo that you've ever heard. So hollow and so dismal, and withal so plain in the distinction of our words that many have supposed it as a spirit that answers.
I do love these ancient ruins. We never tread upon them, but we set our foot upon some reverend history. And, questionless, here in this open court, which now lies naked to the injuries of stormy weather, some men lie interred, loved the church so well, and gave so largely to it, they thought it should have canopied their bones till doomsday. But all things have their end. Churches and cities, which have diseases like to men, must have the like death that we have.
Like death that we have.
Now the echo hath caught you.
It groaned, methought, and gave a very deadly accent.
Deadly accent.
I told you 'twas a pretty one. You may make it a huntsman or a falconer, a musician or a thing of sorrow.
A thing of sorrow.
Aye, sure, that suits best.
That suits it best.
'Tis very like my wife's voice.
Aye, wife's voice.
Come, let's walk further from it. I would not have you go to the Cardinal's tonight. Do not.
Do not.
Wisdom doth not more moderate rate wasting sorrow than time. Take time for't. Be mindful of thy safety.
Be mindful of thy safety.
Necessity compels me. Make scrutiny through the passages of your own life. You'll find it impossible to fly your fate.
Oh, fly your fate.
Hark, the dead stones seem to have pity on you and give you good counsel.
Echo, I will not talk with thee, for thou art a dead thing.
Thou art a dead thing.
My Duchess is asleep now, and her little ones, I hope sweetly. Oh heaven, shall I never see her more?
Never see her more.
I marked not one repetition of the echo but that, and on the sudden a clear light presented me with a face folded in sorrow.
Your fancy merely.
Come, I'll be out of this ague, for to live thus is not indeed to live. It is a mockery and abuse of life. I will not henceforth save myself by halves, lose all or nothing.
Your own virtue save you. I'll fetch your eldest son and second you. It may be that the sight of his own blood spread in so sweet a figure may beget the more compassion. However, fare you well, though in our miseries fortune have a part, yet in our noble sufferings she hath none. Contempt of pain that
And sorry, my laptop froze there, but I assume that the speech has now ended from Aliki, and so that is the end of the scene as they exit. And I feel like Webster missed a trick there, not having the echo finish the scene on pain that we may call our own. Why didn't he just do that? I don't know. But that's a glorious little scene. I put in the chat, I do love a good echo scene. We've had them before. We'll no doubt have them again. Thoughts about this one? Anyone? Lynn?
Well, we've talked about echoes and reflections. Like, this is maybe a little heavy-handed. But we do find out things. It's not just for effect. It's not just thematic. I mean, we do find that the Antonio basically can't live under the sword of Damocles anymore, and he's going to confront his brother-in-law, and that he does think his Duchess is still alive. So we learned some things that we need to know at the same. And yes, someone said in the chat that presumably that the echo is voiced by the actor who plays the Duchess, and I don't actually remember what they did at the Wanamaker, but I do remember the LibriVox version of this, where you have a very good voice actor named Elizabeth Klett who does a lot of work with them, and she voiced the Duchess and the Echo. I think if you were doing it, you would probably want to use some modern technology and distort it so that it's not so recognizably the Duchess's voice, but we know that it is.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely make it sound, like an echo, or like a proper echo. I also feel it ties into what you were talking about earlier, Lynn, in terms of the people hiding and listening and being overheard, and the fact that adds to the claustrophobia. I mean, here you've got the reverse of that almost, because there isn't anybody there, and yet still your words are being overheard. It's like they're being overheard by nature. They're being like, they're literally being echoed back to you. So there's this thing of like, you're never really alone. You're never really sort of, even when you're outside and you're in an old ruin and it's just you and your best mate there, there's always something else there, either physical or metaphysical. Just to add to the general claustrophobia and creepiness of this. Anyone got anything else to add? Yes, Lois. Oh, everybody. Okay. Lois, Susan, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, the scene is poetically really quite remarkable. I mean, and in terms of the themes of the play, this is a fortification built out of the ruins of a cloister. It's kind of like the cardinal putting on military gear and getting rid of his cardinal's robes. I mean, everything is gone in the direction of war and violence. And then, I don't know, something that occurred to me at a fairly late stage, I think, in reading this play, but the Duchess says in the scene where she's courting Antonio, "You speak in me this, for we now are one." And if Webster was thinking of that, I mean, echo scenes certainly are common in this period, but it does seem to me that would be the perfect, example of it, that he speaks and her voice answers.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's really, so you'd have to really point up that earlier line to try and sort of make sure that the audience got that. But yeah, no, that's great. Sue and then Mark.
I don't agree with you for a change, Lois. I think it should be more like Harold Churchill's plays, where you actually have your cue just as you're about to say that we make all our get on with it. I don't think the echo chambers, no time for that at this point in the play. I think it could be done with light and really spooky. That's right on the cue, like we make to her. That's an echo.
Well, yeah,
I would want it sharper and more shocking. Not too much woo-woo.
Not too much woo. I see. I like it. I like a bit of woo-woo.
Is that classy direction?
Yeah, I think it's all valid. It's all the ideas are valid. Mark and then Lynn.
One thing while Lois was talking, calling back to the earlier line, it made me realize, which I hadn't really thought about before, that like the echo, it also is a bit of an echo of Ferdinand's whole thing with his shadow. Antonio is hearing this echo of himself sonically. Ferdinand is freaking out about the visual reflection of himself, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
And then Lois was also talking about just like the poetry of this, and I feel like Antonio's first speech in this second speech of the scene is just really good.
Yeah.
Just talking about people thought that their bones would be canopied till doomsday, but they're not, and all things have their end. It's just good. It's
beautiful speeches and drama, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Lynn.
I kind of meant to flag up this line earlier, but when the Cardinal is advising Bosola on how to catch up with Antonio, it's like go to mass and wait for him. Although I've heard he's not religious, or like he counts religion just a toy or something, which is like, that's a really weird thing to say about a character we're supposed to admire, that basically he thinks religion is bogus.
But it's said by a character whose morality we're not supposed to take at face value at all.
And who's Catholic.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to put in there, though, rather than just say, follow him to mass and then leave it at that. But no, we have to have this little side, but I've heard that he doesn't, so, and is what Antonio is saying here sort of a reflection of that he doesn't really subscribe to the Christian worldview? And earlier the Duchess says something about the strange geometrical hinges on life, and that the doors open either way, with the hint that we go into death, but we could maybe come back. So what this play is trying to say about the metaphysical world is really interesting.
Yeah, well, we were having a lot of comparisons to John Donne in earlier sessions, weren't we? I mean, I actually took that the doors open both ways a different way. I thought she was talking about like birth and death. You know, the doors opening one way and then closing another. But no, it's a really good point. Anyone want to come back on that? Anyone got any further thoughts? No. Oh yeah, Mark. Mark has
Yeah, I
further
mean,
thoughts.
I kind of interrupted briefly to say like, but he's also Catholic, the bishop, cardinal. Um, but yeah, I mean, and it's something that I always find interesting in early modern drama is that there are so many plays that these English playwrights set, especially tragedies where people do terrible things, set in some Catholic country. And on one hand, it's just, lampooning the bad guys from their perspective and like, oh, those Catholics and evil people over there don't know what they're doing. But sometimes I do feel like it can be potentially an interesting way of pushing back on religious authority in general, through the guise of being anti the people who were, as a society, okay thinking are bad when it comes to their views on religion. So I think that's interesting because on one hand, it's the cardinal is saying, well, he's not religious, and it's like, well, as the viewers, we know that the cardinal is talking about from a Catholic perspective. So if Antonio's not religious, then that's a good thing if he's in a Catholic country. But we probably wouldn't feel the same way if we were talking about, something in English, the English church.
Lois, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I think actually that's quite right, that the cardinal thinks that Antonio counts religion but a school name and so on. But I mean, and the Duchess is clearly religious. She talks about heaven's gates and having to enter there on your knees and kneeling to die. But she has also said in that first scene, how can the church build faster? They get married, which Protestants thought was perfectly permissible, simply through the presence of a witness, because I think a lot of the sacraments were denied in Protestantism. There were 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church, and I think there were only 2 left by the time Luther finished with them. And
marriage is not one.
No, marriage is not one of them. A marriage can be done the way that they do it in front of a witness. It's like, well, no, I won't mention the other play where that happens, but anyway. So I think that, the idea that both Antonio and the Duchess are skeptical about some things about the church, and possibly Antonio doesn't go to church because he's not really a Catholic, or, he's been abroad, maybe he's a Huguenot, who knows? I mean, I think it's part of making him and the Duchess more sympathetic, really, not less.
Yeah. Very good. Right. Okay. If everybody is done with this scene, we will move into Act 5, Scene 4. Enter Cardinal, Pescara, Malatesti, Roderigo, and Grisolan.
You shall not watch tonight by the sick prince. His grace is very well recovered.
Good my lord, suffer us?
Oh, by no means. The noise and change of object in his eye doth more distract him. I pray, all to bed, and though you hear him in his violent fit, do not rise, I entreat you.
So, sir, we shall not.
Nay, I must have your promise. Sorry. Upon your honours, for I was enjoined to it by himself. He seemed to urge it sensibly.
Let our honours bind this trifle.
Nor any of your followers.
Neither.
Maybe to make trial of your promise, when he's asleep, myself will rise and feign some of his mad tricks, and cry out for help, and feign myself in danger.
If your throat were cutting, I'd not come at you. Now I have protested against it.
Why, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I know that 'twas a foul storm tonight.
The Lord Ferdinand's chamber shook like an osier.
'Twas nothing put but pure kindness in the devil to rock his own child. And they all exit apart from the cardinal.
Reason why I would not suffer these about my brother is because at midnight I may with better privacy convey Julia's body to her own lodging. On my conscience, I would pray now, but the devil takes away my heart for having any confidence in prayer. About this hour, I appointed Bosola to fetch the body. When he has served my turn, he dies.
And exit the Cardinal. Enter Bosola.
Ha! 'Twas the Cardinal's voice. I heard him name Bosola and my death. Listen, I hear one's footing.
Enter Ferdinand.
Wrangling is a very quiet death.
Nay, then, I see I must stand upon my guard.
What say to that? Whisper softly. Do you agree to it? So, it must be done in the dark. The Cardinal would not for £1,000. The doctor should see it.
Exit Ferdinand.
My death is plotted. Here's the consequence of murder. We value not desert nor Christian breath when we know black deeds must be cured with death.
Enter Antonio and servant.
Here stay, sir, and be confident, I pray. I'll fetch you a dark lantern.
Exit servant.
Could I take him at his prayers? There were hope of pardon.
All right, my sword!
And Bosola stabs Antonio.
I'll not give thee so much leisure as to pray.
Oh, I am gone. Thou hast ended a long suit in a minute.
What art thou?
A most wretched thing, that only have thy benefit in death, to appear myself.
Enter servant with a lantern.
Where are you, sir?
Very near my home. Bosola.
Oh, misfortune!
Mother thy pity, thou art dead else. Antonio, the man I would have saved above mine own life. We are merely the stars' tennis balls, struck and banded which way please them. Oh, good Antonio, I'll whisper one thing in thy dying ear shall make thy heart break quickly. Thy fair Duchess and 2 sweet children.
Their very names kindle a little life in me.
Are murdered.
Some men have wished to die at the hearing of sad tidings. I am glad that I shall do it in sadness. I would not now wish my wounds balmed or healed, for I have no use to put my life to. In all our quest of greatness, like wanton boys whose pastime is in their care, we follow after bubbles blown in the air. Pleasure of life, what is it? Only the good hours of an ague, merely a preparative to rest, to endure vexation. I do not ask the process of my death. Only commend me to Delio.
Break heart.
And let my son fly the courts to prince.
And Antonio dies.
Thou seemst to have loved Antonio.
I brought him hither to have him reconciled to the Cardinal.
I do not ask thee that. Take him up, if thou tender thine own life, and bear him where the Lady Julia was wont to lodge. Oh, my fate moves swift. I have this Cardinal in the forge already. Now I'll bring him to the hammer. Oh, direful misprision! I will not imitate things glorious, no more than base. I'll be mine own example. On, and look thou represent for silence the thing thou bears.
And they exit, and that's the end of Act 5, Scene 4. So, man, that was unlucky. Poor old Antonio. I guess there were probably very good religious reasons for Bosola telling him about his wife and children's deaths just as he's dying, but it seems to me, or certainly from a modern perspective, like a pretty callous thing to do. And I know he's not meaning it to be callous, and like I say, there are probably good reasons, but it's like, oh, that's just like, oh, poor dude. Anyway, let's kick off discussion. I'll go to Lois, then Lynn, and then Mark. Yeah.
Well, it's another obvious parallel. I mean, he tries to bring the Duchess back to life by lying to her that her brothers have been reconciled to Antonio and everything is fine. And then he tries to make Antonio die as quickly as possible to put him out of his pain by telling him the truth. It's another interesting twist.
Yeah. Who was next? Lynn. Lynn was next.
Yeah, doesn't Antonio have a line? Not Antonio, Bosola have a line in first or second act where he says, basically, fate won't let us do the right thing even if we try.
That we cannot be suffered to do good when we have a mind to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Lois has the verbatim quote. It's awesome like that. So like here we go. That line foreshadowed this moment. Okay, I'm going to go beyond Antonio's side. I'm not enough of being a bad guy. The Duchess's ghost haunts me. I want to try to do the right thing, and then he accidentally kills Antonio in the dark. Yeah, the dramaturgy just impresses me every time I read this.
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't it? But so brilliant. Let's go to Mark and then Susan.
I was gonna say that the tennis balls bit was a callback to something, but it must have been a different play. That there were earlier mentions of tennis balls that I'm thinking of that we did recently.
Famous victories of Henry V.
No, something else.
Yeah.
And no other plays about kings. Susan, and then did I see Aliki? Did I see a hand from you, Aliki? No. Yeah, no.
You did, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay, well, I'll go to Susan, and then should you wish to have thoughts, you can have them.
I know we're thinking about Bosola, but it is after all Antonio's dying scene. And I think Webster gives him this beautiful last speech, which shows not only has he been murdered and he's been told these terrible things, but he can still have grace in his death by saying, well, I'm glad I'm going to die. He turns it into something positive, which makes you like this, what was a bit of an accountant at one time. It really does make you like this. I've always thought that the Duchess sort of was what's that thing, choosing below par a man, but then in his death he shows that he really loves and he really understands life. If she's not here, that's okay.
Yeah, you see, I think he's kind of fabulous, Antonio. I think he's just a generally sound bloke. And you don't often get genuinely sound blokes actually in early modern drama. Comedies or tragedies, actually, there are very few genuinely sound blokes, and or at least genuinely sound heroes. And he's just really, he just loves this woman. You know, he's clearly like very conscientious in his job. And I mean, I wasn't actually here for the first session, so I'm casting my memory. I'm scraping together these memories back from when I read the play, which was many decades ago. But like from what I remember, he's really good at what he does. He catches the eye of his mistress. He's not ambitious at all, but he does genuinely love her, and he marries her, and they're so happy, and it's all cool. And then he just has this. He falls victim to these horrendous people. But I mean, I've got quite a lot of time for him. I mean, I know what you mean. I think a lot of this comes down to the playing. Actually, I think there is definitely scope for making him anodyne on stage. But I think a lot of it comes down to how he's directed and how he's acted. Because I think you can certainly play him with layers of depth, and I did see hands. Who had a hand in the air? Lois.
Yes, some critics do talk about him as ineffectual, that he can't stand up for himself. In the scene where Ferdinand threatens her, he's off stage until Ferdinand is gone, and then he comes on saying, I wish he'd be back so I could confront him. People do make that sort of point, but I just feel this is somebody who's completely out of his depth in this world of the court. I mean, as it was pointed out earlier, he's not that base. I mean, he's a gentleman. In fact, at the beginning of the play, he's the one who took the ring oftenest. They were doing this courtly sport of riding at the ring. The ring is obviously, again, symbolic there. And so, he is a gentleman, but he's just not remotely in the same league as the Ferdinand and the Cardinal, who are just steeped in corruption. I mean, nothing but murder, really. I find him very moving, and I find it interesting that he's fond of children. I mean, that he thinks about children when the Duchess asks him about marriage, and then here as well. And that thing about I would not now have my wounds balmed or healed, for I have no use to put my life to. That just breaks me up every time.
Lovely.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. My brain is stirring with all sorts of ways of staging this, but I'm going to save those for the end. Anyone got anything else to add to this scene, or otherwise we will move on? We are going into the final scene of the play, folks. So hang on to your hats, take a deep breath, grab your cushions if you need to. It's Act 5, Scene 5. Enter the Cardinal with a book.
I'm puzzled in a question about hell. He says in hell there's one material fire, and yet it shall not burn all men alike. Lay him by. How tedious is a guilty conscience. When I look into the fish ponds in my garden, methinks I see a thing armed with a rake that seems to strike at me.
And enter Bosola and servant bearing Antonio's body.
How art thou come? Thou looks ghastly. There sits in thy face some great determination, mixed with some fear.
Thus it lightens into action. I am come to kill thee.
Help! Help! Oh God!
Thou art deceived. They are out of thy howling.
Lord, and I will faithfully divide revenues with thee.
Thy prayers and proffers are both unseasonable.
Raise the watch! We are betrayed!
I have confined your flight. I'll suffer your retreat to Julia's chamber, but no further.
Help! We are betrayed.
Enter above Pescara, Malatesti, Roderigo, and Grisolan. Listen!
My dukedom for rescue!
Fie upon his counterfeiting.
Why, 'tis not the Cardinal.
Yes, 'tis he. But I'll see him hanged ere I'll go down to him.
It's a blot upon me. I'm assaulted. I'm lost. Unless some rescue.
He doth this pretty well, but it will not serve to laugh me out of mine honour.
The sword's at my throat.
You would not bawl so loud then.
Come, let's go to bed. He told us this much aforehand.
He wished you should not come at him, but believe it, the accent of the voice sounds not in jest. I'll down to him, howsoever, and with engines force ope the doors.
Exit above Pescara.
Let's follow him aloof, and note how the Cardinal will laugh at him.
And exit above all the others, Malatesti, Roderigo, and Grisolan.
There's for you first, 'cause you shall not unbarricade the door to let in rescue.
And Bosola kills the servant.
What cause hath thou to pursue my life?
Look there.
Antonio?
Slain by my hand unwittingly. Pray, and be sudden. When thou killedst thy sister, thou tookst from justice her most equal balance, and left her naught but her sword.
No mercy!
Now it seems thy greatness was only outward, for thou fall'st faster of thyself than calamity can drive thee. I'll not waste longer time there.
And Bosola stabs the Cardinal.
Thou hast hurt me.
Again!
Shall I die like a leveret, without any resistance? Help! 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 I am slain!
Enter Ferdinand.
The alarm! Give me a fresh horse. Rally the vaunt guard, or the day is lost. Yield! Yield! I give you the honor of arms. Shake my sword over you. Will you yield?
Help me! I'm your brother!
The devil! My brother fight upon the adverse party?
He wounds the Cardinal and in the scuffle gives Bosola his death wound.
There flies your ransom.
Oh, justice! I suffer now for what hath former been. Sorrow is held the eldest child of sin.
Now you're brave fellows. Caesar's fortune was harder than Pompey's. Caesar died in the arms of prosperity, Pompey at the feet of disgrace. You both died in the field. The pain's nothing. Pain many times is taken away with the apprehension of greater, as the toothache with the sight of the barber that comes to pull it out. There's philosophy for you.
Now my revenge is perfect. Sink thou main cause
And Bosola kills Ferdinand.
of my undoing. Last part of my life hath done me best service.
Give me some wet hay. I'm broken-winded. I do account this world but a dog kennel. I will vault credit and affect high pleasures beyond death.
He seems to come to himself now he's so near the bottom.
My sister. Oh, my sister. There's the cause on't. Whether we fall by ambition, blood, or lust, like diamonds, we are cut with our own dust.
And Ferdinand dies.
Thou hast thy payment too.
Yes. I hold my weary soul in my teeth, 'tis ready to part from me. I do glory that thou, which stoodst like a huge pyramid begun upon a large and ample base, shall end in a little point, a kind of nothing.
Enter below Pescara, Malatesti, Roderigo, and Grisolan.
How now, my lord?
Oh, sad disaster!
How comes this?
Revenge. The Duchess of Malfi, murdered by the Aragonian brethren. For Antonio, slain by this hand. For lustful Julia, poisoned by this man. Lastly, for myself, that was an actor in the main of all, much against mine own good nature, yet in the end neglected.
How now, my lord?
Look to my brother. He gave us these large wounds as we were struggling here in the rushes. And now, I pray, let me be laid by and never thought of.
And the Cardinal dies.
How fatally it seems he did withstand his own rescue.
Thou wretched thing of blood! How came Antonio by his death?
In a mist. I know not how. Such a mistake as I have often seen in a play. I am gone. We are only like dead walls or vaulted graves that, ruined, yield no echo. Are you well? It may be pain, but no harm to me to die in so good a quarrel. Oh, this gloomy world, in what a shadow or deep pit of darkness doth womanish and fearful mankind live. Let worthy minds ne'er stagger in distrust to suffer death or shame. But what is just, mine is another voyage.
And Bosola dies.
The noble Delio, as I came to the palace, told me of Antonio's being here and showed me a pretty gentleman, his son and heir.
And with that enter Delio with Antonio's son. Oh, sir, you come too late.
I heard so, and was armed for it ere I came. Let us make noble use of this great ruin, and join all our force to establish this young hopeful gentleman in his mother's right. These wretched, eminent things leave no more fame behind them than should one fall in a frost and leave his print in snow. As soon as the sun shines, it ever melts both form and matter. I have ever thought nature doth nothing so great for great men as when she's pleased to make them lords of truth. Integrity of life is fame's best friend, which nobly, beyond death, shall crown the end.
And they exit, and that is the end of the play. Woo! There we go. We're left with a lot of bodies on the stage, which, I mean, come on. This is a Jacobean tragedy, so we'd expect nothing less. But my goodness, yeah, this is what happens. This is what happens when you start murdering people. Just, yeah. I mean, yeah, you could pretty much sum up the entire play. Actually, you could probably sum up most Jacobean tragedies with that line, couldn't you? This is what happens when you start murdering people. Let's have thoughts on that final scene before we go into final thoughts. Anyone got anything to say about this last scene of the play, Lynn?
Yeah, Bosola continues to have some of the most amazing lines and most amazing language. When he tells the Cardinal, when you murdered your sister, when you murdered the Duchess, you took the balance, the scales away from justice. All she's got left is her sword. What an amazing metaphor! What an amazing metaphor. And then he says, I hold my soul in my teeth. Oh, what an image. What an image. Because until actually fairly recently, it was believed in ancient times and medieval times and including the Renaissance, that the soul and the breath were sort of co-permanence. Like your last breath out was your soul exiting your body. So I hold my soul in my teeth. Just barely. The language.
Gritting onto it.
Yeah.
Hanging on. Yeah. Yeah, no, amazing. Anyone else got anything to add to that final scene? Sue?
Well, talk about competition, about how different actors are going to die. I think if you were rehearsing this, you'd have to do one session where you just laughed your head off and you did the most outrageous. Because if one person starts corpsing, I'm just thinking, wow, it's so dangerous, isn't it? Luckily, that language will ground everybody. But gosh, that is, how many deaths was that? 6 in one go or something?
Yeah, the one I felt sorry for was the servant, because I'm not entirely sure, but was that the same servant who was in the previous scene? Because if it was, then he was a perfectly decent dude. Mark.
Yeah, Bosola says, because you shall not unbarricade the door, I'll kill you. So presumably the servant is making to do that, or starting to do that, and that can motivate that murder. I think if you're not doing that, it's just going to come across as ridiculous. So you got to have the servant trying to save the Cardinal there.
Trying to, yes. Anyone got anything to add about this final scene, or are we all just too traumatized and we need to go straight to final thoughts? Lynn.
Yeah, but and yes, it traumatizing, but also again kind of funny, because earlier the Cardinal says he's trying to hide his tracks because he's murdered his girlfriend. Don't come down, no matter what you hear. Don't come down. I might test you. Don't come down. Don't, if whatever you hear, stay in your rooms. And of course that comes back to bite him in the ass because it's a play. You might know on some level when he's saying that, whatever you do, stay in your rooms. It's just like, I wonder what's going to happen there.
Yeah, there's that lovely meta line, isn't there? Is it Bosola who has that line about, I saw this happen in a play. And it's like, yeah. Lois, did I see a hand from you?
Well, yes. Just to add to that, really, that what's so extraordinary about it is the number of laugh lines that Webster puts in his tragic ending. Those are certainly among them. And, even the bit about we were struggling here in the rushes. What that must mean is that I think the Cardinal is actually kneeling to Bosola for mercy. And then I think he maybe possibly pulls him down. Ferdinand rushes in as usual. There's all this stuff about that. Who knows who thinks who is who? Does Ferdinand even know that the Cardinal is his brother, or does he think he's the devil? What does the devil mean the devil, or does it just mean that hell with it? And another reflection, of course, the Cardinal seeing something in the fish ponds in his garden striking at him. That would be his own reflection, coming back and with an arm against him, another terrifying image. But I take it that Bosola, Ferdinand, and the Cardinal are all kind of rolling around on the floor, or at least that's what Bosola and the Cardinal are doing, because he gave us these large wounds as we were struggling here in the rushes, which are what way that they always strewed the floor with
the
brushes.
Floor. Yeah. No, you'd have to stage combat the shit out of this, wouldn't you? You'd have to really choreograph this scene very, very meticulously, I think. Which, I mean, all scenes that are choreographed, all fights and deaths that are choreographed meticulously, so well they should be. But I mean, like, you could do something really quite amazing, I think, with this fight and these deaths, and you could have the Cardinal crawling along the floor, and you could have Ferdinand there doing, like, it would be quite a spectacle. Okay, I see. Like, people, stick your hands up properly if you want to comment, because I'm not quite sure. Susan, and then back to Lois.
Well, it's only that fish pond. It really gets me, because I always think about the church. I remember I'm by a cathedral in Norwich, and there is a swan, a sort of pond where they fed the swans, because they were going to do that weird thing that, they put something inside of something else, and a chicken inside of it. And this is what they pigged out on these cardinals. This is what they hogged while other people were starving. That fish pond is an absolute trophy of religion and food, and they're going to be all right. They're going to have plenty in their bellies. It triggers something. Have you been to Fortune? And those great abbeys up in Yorkshire, they all have. They're growing everything. They've got wine, they've got mead, they've got fish, and it's sort of a final image of the gluttony of religion.
Yeah, and just as you were talking there, I think it was you actually, Susan, was saying in a previous session about this play being a bit like a Bosch painting, and actually that just came back to me as you were talking. Those pools that you get in Bosch paintings with just like various crazy things, just like the pool's being crowded with all kinds of weird stuff, and anyway, that's by the by. Lois, your hand was there.
Oh yes, well, I don't know, there's just so much one wants to comment on. I mean, even before that fish pond line, the Cardinal says, how tedious is a guilty conscience. I mean, really tedious. And it's one of the few places where you see some, because he does seem totally unconcerned about what he's done or anything, but then the fact that he has that sort of vision of something with a fork or a rake coming at him from his own fish pond suggests, something's going on in his mind, but you don't really find out very much about it. I mean, the other thing is the effect at the end of Delio arriving with the one surviving child, who of course had that terrible horoscope about the short life and violent death. But one production I saw I thought was really very effective, where Delio says, let's all get together, to establish this young hopeful gentleman in his mother's right. In other words, hope that he will succeed to the Dukedom of Malfi in spite of everything else. And then I think all the other people on stage knelt to this little boy who was probably about 4, standing there looking puzzled as to what it was all about. I mean, it's just again, it can be a very moving ending. It depends on what you want to do with it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to use that comment to segue into my final thought about this play, because I do think this thing of like the little boy being on stage at the end. Yeah, I mean, there is that thing of his horoscope. Yes, he's going to die early and horribly, and it's like, oh yeah, I don't know, I might just cut that line because we've had quite enough, haven't we? But I have a thing just to add yet another recurring theme to this play, which actually isn't in the play, but I think I might just put it in if I was directing this. I was talking in the second session about how I'd really want to pull out the strands of family in this play, like the really nice family that's created by the Duchess and Antonio, in the years before their sort of, before the brothers start to do their thing, and I think I'd really like to stage it whereby in that interim period, or certainly when you come back at the beginning of Act 2, there are lots of toys sort of strewn around the the stage. There's sort of lots of evidence of children, even though no one's supposed to know that there are children there. There'd be kind of, you know, evidence of them here and there. And then I have this sort of image of a rag doll, you know, that you could have a doll as a sort of totem that you could use throughout the play. So it starts off as this really, you know, just this really sweet child's toy. And then maybe Ferdinand picks it up and, you know, starts twisting it around and pulling an arm off it, or or something, or a leg maybe would be more appropriate. And then this sort of this kind of battered doll just keeps cropping up over and over in different contexts throughout the play, as it, you know, as the play gets darker and darker and the doll gets, you know, bloodier and bloodier, and it kind of ends up with Antonio. Antonio has it with him as he dies, because, you know, he is so fond of his children. And then, because his body is still on stage in the final scene, the little boy at the end comes and picks it up, you know, and it's kind of all like, by this time it's soaked in blood, and it's like, yeah, thinking about it, you'd need a different doll for every act. If you were doing more than one performance, you'd need a whole series of them, making sure you got the right one on the stage at the right time. But I just think, and, you know, because the Duchess as well, you know, after she's not that she'd have the doll in that scene, but this whole thing of, like, you know, you can imagine that after she's strangled, she's there, she just kind of flops, you know, because she's been strangled with ropes, and she just kind of flops like a rag doll. I think I think you could use that as a recurring motif to kind of encapsulate a lot of the other recurring, circling, echoing motifs in the plays that is there in the language, but of course your audience aren't necessarily going to get that, because it's a verbal thing, not a visual thing. But yeah, that would be one way of doing it, but I'm sure there are many others. So let's go around the room for final thoughts. How would you stage this? Feel free to talk about any aspect that you about the play you like, but given that this play is quite well known already, I'd be interested to know in particular what you would do if you were going to stage it today. So let me start with Aliki.
I don't really have any staging ideas. I'm just stunned because I didn't know this play. So I'm sitting here going, oh, so that's what a masterpiece looks like. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, fair comment. Susan.
Like diamonds, we are cut with our own dust. I would have, like diamonds can be dark and light. And you know those kind of studded walls? I know they're a bit kind of 70s, but I love all that sort of like diamonds all over. So the light would be flashing around here, and then at other times they could be just as sinister as hell, or like a weird rock that, you know, I love the diamond thing. Shoot me to death with diamonds. I mean, honestly, I don't like diamonds myself, but that writing, unbelievable. Thank you. It's lovely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, there are a lot of recurring diamond motifs, aren't there? There's so much richness in this play.
You know, those kind of in relief things in nightclubs in the 70s. I want it like that.
Okay, right. Why not? Alan, let me come to you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm surprised in some ways that it's got the length of performance history that it has, because I think you would have to be incredibly careful, because there is so much of it which is so OTT that it could very easily descend into basically the audience just laughing in total disbelief. I mean, there is some beautiful language in there, but an awful lot of the action just seems so OTT in a modern sense that I suspect that an audience could just get a fit of the nervous giggles.
Yeah, I mean, whenever anyone says this about well, no, not whenever, because there are some plays that are just so incredibly bonkers. It's like, yeah, how would you stop the audience laughing? But I mean, certainly with this play, I just feel it's the same thing that I always say. It all comes down to the directing and the acting. The language is so gorgeous, and this play is so psychologically sound that I don't think there'd be any problem with that. Honestly, provided that you had a team that knew what they were doing, which, if this was a professional production, hopefully they would. Let me come to Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Sarah, you pointed out earlier the line Bosola has when he's taking yet another body away, and he says something like, I'm going to get a job bringing bodies to the churchyards at this rate. I think to me, it feels like the kind of things that just feel like bonkers over the top in a certain light. The play feels aware of. The play feels like it can highlight it with like kind of a witty, cutting line without undercutting what it's doing, and the emotional stakes of it. And then I also just wanted to say, we talked earlier about the echoes and shadows. And then in Bosola's final speech before he dies, he talks, specifically heavily calling back to the scene with the echo where he says, "We are only like dead walls or vaulted graves that ruined yield no echo." But then he also mentions shadows in that same speech, and I just feel like it's good stuff.
Indeed. Good stuff indeed. Rachel, let me come to you. Any final thoughts?
Not really.
Sorry. Fair enough. Lois, final thoughts from you, please.
Well, I mean, I loved this play when I first read it, and I go to see it whenever I get a chance. I'm nearly always disappointed. I think there's a real problem in that the language is so rich and beautiful, but you can't really take it all in at first hearing. And then and of course, what you do notice is the action and the violence and so on, which is much easier to respond to. I almost think if I were producing it, I would do it as a radio play. I think that just listening to it, you would be able to take in all the words, which are often lost in production. I mean, there are various reasons why it can be ruined in production. I think the main one is, I remember the one that was done at the National Theatre. It was Philip Prowse, one of the directors from Glasgow Citizens, and he clearly read the famous poem by Eliot beginning, "Webster was much possessed by death." And boy, did he run with that. There was a character there was a character representing Death who was present all through the play. Duchess was also present in the last act and kept wandering around. And so, of course, it was quite easy for her to do the echo in the final scene. He cut virtually all the humor so that it really was all about death. And then I was furious. I mean, I was somebody that was right ahead of me as we were walking out was saying to his partner, well, that was a marvelous production, but what a terrible play.
No. Yeah, no, I can quite understand why you were furious about that. I think if I ever direct this, Lois, I'm gonna have you as a consultant, just because I feel you need catharsis. After that, we need to make your ideal production happen at some point. Right, Lynn, let me come to you with your final thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you, Lois.
Well, I've seen other
and your restraint is admirable. We're just like yelling at that guy. Got it all wrong. One thing that I just wanted to mention about the end is, again, there's something sort of almost funny about the fact that the Aragonian brethren are these Machiavels. They've gone through all of like hiring a spy and and having an affair on all this, and then in the trying to get what they want and protect themselves. And in the end, Bosola's just like, I'm tired of you guys. You dead. Just like, I'm so done with you guys.
Enough already. Yeah.
They're so powerful and they've done all this stuff, but in the end, the death comes for us all, and they're really as vulnerable as any anybody.
And they're almost more vulnerable. It's like they're both like really pathetic, aren't they? At the end, I mean, like they're just Other people have noble, well, most notably the Duchess and Antonio, which is kind of fitting. But like, other people have noble ends, but these two, no, they're just really, really pathetic in death.
And in terms of the production, it's pretty crazy over the top, and you might want to think about, I don't know, the madman. Could you cut the madman scene? Is that maybe a little much? But I really think that a good director and actors who are invested in telling this story can smooth over the moments where the psychology seems a little weird, or where the coincidence is serving the plot maybe a little too much. I'm really not concerned about that. I think it could really work, and I think the production they did at the Wanamaker did work on a lot of levels. The weakest moment, honestly, I think, is the end, where Delio says integrity is fame's best friend. He like gets so platitudinous at the end. It's just like, it just really falls really flat for me, for him trying to like, praise virtue and condemn sin and give this sort of note of hope about the oldest son of the union of Antonio and the Duchess, who doesn't have a name. We haven't mentioned that, but she does. We never learn her name. It like this, the sort of ray of it. Just it kind of doesn't ring true to me. So I would need to think about, how do we make this end work?
I think you could make it work. I mean, I take what you mean about the way it's written on the page. When you see it like flat on the page, it's like, oh, well, this is a bit preachy and morally, and kind of let's just wrap everything up a little bit too neatly. I think depending on Delio's state of mind, depending on on his emotions in that final scene, given that there are all these bodies on the ground and one of them is his best friend, and given that he's got this boy in his arms and he knows that his two brothers are dead by this point, I think you could make it work. I think you could rip the audience hearts out, which is about the only kind of murder we haven't had, actually, when no one's had their heart ripped out, but we'll do it to the audience instead. Anyone got any final absolute final thoughts to say before we close the session? No, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. Everyone's had catharsis. Everybody's like, just taking a deep breath and has one foot out the door already on their way to the pub for a big stiff drink. So in which case, all that remains is for me to thank all these wonderful, wonderful readers, both for their reading and for their amazing insights over not just today, but the last 4 sessions as well. The entire play is now available on YouTube as a first look. So please do go and have a look. And if you want to see an audio production of this play, as Lois suggested, then you can vote for that. If you follow the Beyond Shakespeare podcast, you do get the opportunity to vote for your favourite plays if you become a patron. So that's something that you can do if you go to the Beyond Shakespeare website. Other than that, we will see you next time. Thank you very much and goodbye. Let worthy minds ne'er stagger in distrust to suffer death or shame for what is just.